Well, good morning, everyone. I will ask that if you can begin to find a seat. If you can, we will get started with our second plenary session here as well. So I do want to welcome you to this final plenary session. There's still more to come after this, but my name is Patrick Smith, and I'm president-elect of ASBH. Oh, I was going to say, well, good, thank you. Well, I was going to say, if you start that, don't stop, right? You got to go all the way, commit to it, right? If you're going to do it, right? If you don't, that's all right. There you go. All right, no, that's good. But no, I hope you all have really enjoyed the conference this week. And I also hope that you've been able to meet someone new and start forming relationships and ways of thinking about collaboration. And we also hope that you have learned something here, perhaps learned something new about a familiar topic as you've interacted with some of the papers, the plenary sessions, hallway conversations, whatever it may be. Before we start today's session, we will recognize and hear from one of the outstanding figures in bioethics and the health humanities, our 2025 Lifetime Achievement Award winner. Now, all of our 2025 annual awards will be formally presented at our virtual members meeting on October 29th, okay? So what date did I say? October 29th of 2025, okay, not 2026. So please make sure that you're able to tune in because we want to honor these outstanding figures in our community. And just want to remind you that you can register for this virtual session on the ASBH website or in the conference app. So please take a moment to do that because we certainly want to see you all there as we're trying something new for this upcoming session. Now today, I am pleased to introduce our 2025 Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, Dr. Margaret Pabst Batten. Dr. Batten is a distinguished professor emerita of philosophy and adjunct professor of internal medicine in the Center for Ethics, Arts, and Humanities at the University of Utah. Her academic legacy spans more than 4 decades and includes authorship or contributions to some 20 books, including those on end-of-life issues, religious groups, drugs, and the seminal text, The Ethics of Suicide, Historical Sources. Known by many in the field as the mothers of bioethics, Dr. Batten's leadership in the field includes co-direction of the NEH Summer Seminar on Ethics at the End of Life, leadership roles at the American Philosophical Association and the American Association of Suicidology, and more. Her commitment to collaborative ethics, including a wide breadth of international collaboration and research, has opened new frontiers in global bioethics. Above all this, Dr. Batten has been a generous, inspiring mentor to countless individuals. She is always willing to offer thoughtful guidance, unwavering support, and her sense of humor to the next generation of scholars and thinkers. We offer this Lifetime Achievement Award to a foundational voice in our field. And I just want to congratulate you, Dr. Batten, and I want you to also join me in congratulating Dr. Batten for this award.
Wow. I have to start by saying something formal. I'm immensely grateful for this award. And I'm partly astonished because so much of my work over a lifetime has involved using thought experiments. These are accessible to some, rejected by others, right? On end-of-life practice, infectious disease, population management and abortion, all sorts of other things. So in gratitude for this award, instead of doing what is normally expected, to thank everyone, everywhere, who's been a wonderful associate, accomplice in production of work, all that, There's so many people that would fill that role. I could spend all 8 minutes I'm allowed just naming people. I'd rather give you what I'm thinking of as a return gift. Okay? It's an account of how I think about thought experiments, and to show how I think seemingly far-fetched thought experiments can work in addressing large, serious, real-world problems. And that's what I've been trying to do for a lifetime. Now, in doing this thought experiment with you, I won't use any names, neither of places nor actions, but you will no doubt automatically fill in these. But remember, though, that this thought experiment, discomforting as it is, could be said at many different historical times and distant places in the real world. And please keep in mind that it's a thought experiment and not a proposal, but it's meant to expose, identify, and challenge some of our most basic assumptions, and along the way, confront Leon Cass's famous claim about the, quote, wisdom of repugnance. You ready? Thought experiment? Country A has been attacked by militants from Area B with substantial loss of life. Country A responds with military incursions into Area B, sustained over many months, demolishing much of Area B's infrastructure and resulting in very substantial loss of life, especially women and children. Country A restricts aid to Area B, closes borders, deflects a flotilla of ships C headed towards Area B, and continues military bombardment. You with me? This is a sober thought experiment. The population in Area B is now officially experiencing famine. More than 400 people, I wrote this a couple of weeks ago, more than 400 people have already died of starvation, including nearly 150 children. Some 500,000 are at immediate risk of starvation. Children are devastatingly malnourished, and some 2.1 million people seriously malnourished. Because the borders have been closed, there's no way to escape from Area B. Now, as background for this thought experiment, I see a lot of people looking sort of serious, right? This is not a funny situation, is it? No. Call to mind other no-escape historical events like the Donner Party, the 1972 plane crash in the Andes that killed most of the passengers but left the 16 survivors alone without hope of rescue, and the so-called custom of the sea, this is in the days of sail, involving survival measures among shipwrecked mariners adrift or stranded on a desert island. They were expected to draw lots. In the current case, where starvation threatens the very survival of the population of Area B, do you think its populace should or shouldn't be morally entitled to act in the same ways, resorting to anthropophagy, as it is technically called, by consuming the bodies of recently deceased humans, whether soldiers from Country A, militants from Country B, Area B, or civilian casualties in the war? This could make available a very large supply of highly nutritive material. Would this be morally wrong or evil, morally permissible, or even morally praiseworthy given the circumstances? And keep in mind that this question could arise in many other conflict areas around the globe. Mass starvation has frequently been a weapon of war. To note just one example, the siege of Leningrad in 1941. Now, for contrast, call to mind many life and death thought experiments conducted in recent bioethics. Trolley problems, in which you must decide whether to pull a switch that will keep the runaway trolley from keeping the 5 men on this track, but deliberately aim at it to kill one on the other track. Bathtub problems, in which the question is whether the one greedy uncle who pushes his nephew under the water to gain an inheritance is worse, or not worse, just equally worse, the other greedy uncle who sees his nephew hit his head on the tub, slide under the water, and does nothing to rescue him. What about the famous violinist who finds herself hooked up by her kidneys to a famous violinist for 9 months? And the question is, can she kick him out of her hospital bed and detach him? If so, he will die. Or should she preserve his life but remain essentially imprisoned for that time? And don't forget, as long as we're cataloging all these great cases from bioethics, the fat man stuck in the mouth of the cave, blocking the escape of his fellow spelunkers as the water rises. But they just happen to have a stick of dynamite. Right? Our A, B, and C thought experiment, it differs from these in that it does not involve killing, only using material already killed. But it ups the ante, so to speak, by using a still more stigmatized notion to explore survival issues, anthropophagy. I had to talk with the signers to make sure that it was possible to translate this. Anthropophagy in an acute, current, real-world setting. When it's called by its common name, cannibalism, this unleashes what is known in bioethics as the yuck factor, that gut response of utter disgust. I just couldn't do that, people say. This is known as the wisdom of repugnance. But this yuck response is balanced against pragmatic assumptions about how to save lives. That's the way a lot of thought experiments in bioethics work. In this one, the repugnance factor of humans eating other humans may be just a good bit stronger than thought experiments involving, say, killing or letting die. So this one has an ingredient that's more disturbing than other disturbing thought experiments. When you gasp at the audacity or perhaps tastelessness of this particular thought experiment, let me thank you again with deep gratitude for this award. I'm especially grateful that I suspect it's been this kind of out-of-the-box use of thought experiments in many different contexts over a lifetime that has led you to award it to me. I hope you take this one home with you to ponder and discuss, to explore the tension between repugnance and pragmatic strategies. This is my return gift to you, not meant to be uncomfortable, though I know it is, but to provoke thought about a deeply disturbing issue for our times. I wrote these remarks a couple of weeks ago and hope they seem slightly less relevant now, but they are actually relevant in many, many times and places, past, present, and no doubt, dismayingly, future. But wait, let's push this thought experiment still a bit further. My birthday is next month. I'll be 85. I'm generally healthy and nicely plump. I've had an enormously rich, long life capped by this wonderful award. I have 2 children. I have 5 grandchildren. I have 6 great-grandchildren. All this is true. Suppose we all lived in Area B. Could I, or indeed should I, say to them, well, it'd be customary, family, for you to give me a present for my birthday, but I'd like to give you a present instead. Thanks. I've often said I think of philosophy and bioethics in particular as a troublemaking discipline, right? And I hope I'm leaving you with good trouble. Thanks.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you so much, Dr. Batten, for that reflection on the field of thought experiment and the gift that you have left us here on this morning. Now at this time, with no further ado, I would like to invite our 2025 Program Committee Chair, Dr. Shilpa Shashidara, who will introduce today's speaker. So, great.
Good afternoon, everyone. What an incredible start. Thank you very much, Dr. Batten. I am so perfect. I'm so excited to welcome our plenary speaker, Miss Mary Elizabeth Williams. Miss Williams is a journalist whose work has appeared in the New York Times, the LA Times, and elsewhere. Her New York Times article, essay, A Second Embrace with Hearts and Eyes Open, was adapted for the second season of Amazon Prime's Modern Love series. She's an author of the award-winning book, A Series of Catastrophes and Miracles, a true story of love, science, and cancer, and her work has covered a broad range of issues, including the ethics of organ transplantation, reproductive health care, and the repercussions of medical whistleblowing. A member of 2 patient advisory boards and NYU's Compassionate Use and Pre-Approval Access Working Group, she holds a certification in narrative medicine from Columbia University and is currently a doctoral candidate in medical humanities. Her research focuses on the practical applications of crisis communication in healthcare. Today, she'll share her moving story and discuss the importance of patient perspectives as we work to promote more just, compassionate healthcare. Welcome, Ms. Williams.
Okay, going after Dr. Batten, I feel like that's like coming on after Hendrix. Like, what am I supposed to do with this, Dr. Batten? It was so dark. It was really, really dark. I mean, it was great, but I can't give you that. What I can give you this morning is some really good news. I have no slides. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm not giving you any slides because aren't we all tired of slides by now? God. Yeah, I'm tired of making them. I'm tired of looking at them. They're great, but I'm so done. So instead, I'm just going to talk to you like a person. I think that might be interesting because that's kind of what this is all about. That's kind of the theme of this whole to-do. And I'm going to talk to you. I'm not going to probably talk at you because I love the sound of my own voice. But what I really hope we can do is just have a conversation here. And I'll get the ball rolling. But if you feel deeply inspired at any point to like come up and say something, I want you to do that. We will have time at the end for some questions, and I want you to not be shy. I know you are a strong group of people who can wrestle with questions about whether to eat people, so you can definitely get up here and ask a stranger a question. So don't be shy about that. And then after that, if you want to, we're going to continue the conversation, and we can talk one-on-one, because that's what I'm here to do, okay? Is just talk to you and be of service to you. Because I have to tell you, I talk to pharmaceutical companies and I talk to hospitals, and don't tell anybody, don't let this leave the room, but you're my favorites. You are my favorites. I love talking about ethics. I love humanities. That's what my background is in humanities. And what you do is so important and so subtle and so complicated and so often disregarded that I have the most immense respect for you, and I'm so grateful for your presence here, and I'm excited to be among you, to have the privilege of being among you. We were talking last night at dinner, and I asked everybody to kind of go around and tell me the stories of how they wound up here and how they got to this place, and everybody had this amazing story about coming from the world of medicine and gerontology, and I was instead dragged kicking and screaming into it. If I could have had a path where I did not have a life where I talk about bioethics and medicine and clinical trial work, I would have chosen that. That would have been what I wanted. I went to film school. That's I'd much rather be standing up here talking to you about Ryan Coogler movies, but this is what we've got. So the way that it starts for me, and if there's anyone here who's heard me tell my story before, I'm so sorry. And I just want you to feel free to absolutely dissociate and just look at your phone and like whatever you need to do to just power through. Like I will not feel offended at all, because I sometimes get really tired of telling my story too. But it basically starts in the summer of 2010. I notice a little scab on the top of my head when I'm washing my hair. I go to the doctor. I go to my dermatologist, my friend who gets Botox recommended to me. Like, this all starts with Botox. Thank you, Botox. And she says, that looks like skin cancer. And I say, all right. And a few days later, I'm in the middle of my work. It's the morning. And my phone rings. And I see that it's my dermatologist. And she says, the 3 words you never want a doctor to start a conversation with. She says, I'm so sorry. And I have cancer. I have melanoma. And she says, I've made an appointment for you at Memorial Sloan Kettering tomorrow, which tells me that this might be serious. And I go to Memorial Sloan Kettering and I meet my new oncologist, because now I have an oncologist. And I have surgery a few days later because that's the way my cancer is. And then I think of myself as a cancer survivor. And I think, good for me. I think I beat it. The hubris of someone, with all the hubris of someone who's only had cancer once. And then time goes by. 3 months later, my best friend is diagnosed with ovarian cancer. 5 months after that, my father-in-law dies of colon cancer. And the following summer, I go in for my scans, and I am re-diagnosed at stage 4. I have cancer in my lungs and in my soft tissue, and it's 2011. And if you have metastatic melanoma in 2011, your 5-year prognosis is maybe 5 to 7%. It's the beginning of the school year. I don't think I'm going to live to see the end of it. I don't know if I'm going to live to see Christmas. I have 2 young children. But because I am freakishly lucky, I'm at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and my oncologist says, I want you to go upstairs and start talking to the immunotherapy team. And I'm like, what's immunotherapy? Because at this point, it's not well known. And she says, I want to talk to you. I want you to start talking about a clinical trial that they are just starting to recruit for. And I have all of the fear and skepticism of not knowing what a clinical trial even really is, what it entails. My main fear is that I'm going to become an experiment, and that I am being punted into the world of medical research because that might be all that is left for research, not for me. And my doctor doesn't think she can do anything for me because chemo doesn't work, surgery doesn't work. So I meet with a bunch of doctors, a couple of people in the team, one of whom is not the usual person who is heading this trial. But I come in one day to talk to him. There's a series of hoops you have to jump through. And I'm in my little seersucker gown, because Memorial Sloan Kettering has really cute hospital gowns, which I appreciate, because it's on the Upper East Side, and it's quite bespoke. I really like that about that, because it's even like my colors, like it's really good. If you're gonna get cancer, make sure that the gowns go with your hair. So this doctor walks in, and he's got a bunch of other people with him. And he says, in a very presumptive way. So it's okay if I bring in some of my fellows with me. We're gonna watch you while this goes on. And I'm in my gown, and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with that information. It seems like it's already a fait accompli. By the way, I've taken French. Thank you. And he starts examining me, and he turns to his fellows, and he says, "So this is that tumor that I was telling you about?" Yeah, and I love telling that story. Like, there's that part of you that is so shocked and terrified, and then there's a writer part of your brain that's like, that's good. Oh, that's good, I'm gonna use that. That is not the last time anyone's gonna hear that line. And he proceeds to talk about the tumor, particularly, there's this one special tumor that I have that's on my back that looks like a big ugly bruise, and it's quite painful to the touch, and it's right where my bra is, because we can say the word bra here, right? We're all professionals. We all know that people wear bras, right? So I can talk about my support garments with you, right? Okay. So I said, actually, I was talking with my surgeon about this one, and it's really uncomfortable, and he said that maybe we could have this excised. And this doctor immediately shuts me down, and he says, oh, no. If you get that tumor removed, you can't participate in this trial. We need that tumor. I know. Again, I'm like, I'm going to remember you. And I just kind of was in shock, because I had to then watch him and his fellows leave the room, and I had to put on my clothes and go back to work and pick up my kids with my stage 4 cancer that was rapidly accelerating. By the way, I also had lice, because I have 2 kids. And if you ever want to feel like your body hates you, I highly recommend having stage 4 cancer and lice at the same time. It was so gross. It was so gross. Like, it was just so gross. And I was really absolutely shell-shocked, because what had just transpired in a matter of, 5 minutes, confirmed all of my worst fears. That I was going to be a human subject, that I was not a person, that I was a tumor. I was actually a series of tumors, but he really liked this one particular one that I had. That one really had caught his eye. And because I'm from New Jersey and I'm confrontational and scrappy and angry, I went up to the front desk afterwards, and I had put my clothes on, and I said, I am not meeting with that doctor again. I'm not talking to him. And here's the thing. If he had been the primary on that trial, I would not have entered it. It didn't matter that I was qualified, because in every other way, except for the fact that I had a rapidly progressing disease, I didn't trust him, because he didn't respect me. He didn't see me. And what I like to tell people is all any of us ever want, all any of us want, is to be seen, is to be heard. And someone who can't give you that, how am I supposed to trust him? And I know that that is an emotional choice. That is a feeling choice, because I had a lot of evidence that had been presented to me that this was my best option. This was pretty much my only option. This trial was probably going to be the only chance I had of buying myself a little bit more time to raise my kids. And I wouldn't have done it. And I don't think that that's a mistake. I don't think that was a wrong choice. But fortunately, the person who was the primary on my trial is named Dr. Jed Walchuk. And if any of you know him, he's the greatest person in the world, maybe. When I talk about him, I tend to get super emotional. I get like Holly Hunter in Raising Arizona, and I'm just like, I love him so much. I just love him so much. Because when I met with Jed, and I get to call him Jed now. I've earned it. Jed talked to me about what I wanted. He said, tell me about yourself. He started with just tell me about yourself. Tell me who you are. And I said, I've got 2 kids. I just want to raise them. He said, tell me about your daughters. We talked about my kids. That's what we did. We didn't even really cover the cancer. He saw me. And that was what made my choice for me. I became one of the first 8 people in the world in that trial. 8 human beings. I guess that's what a person is. If I were editing myself, I'd be really mad at myself right now. And I became the first to present with no evidence of disease. Oh, no. I hope that's for Jed, because all I did was show up. But I showed up for 2 years. I showed up for 2 really hard years of doing my job full time, raising my kids, watching my best friend die, watching a lot of other people I know get cancer and suffer. Really, really tough stuff. And I'm still, 14 years later, part of this trial. I'm being studied long term. But I knew when I sat down with Jed Walchuk and some of the other people in that team, the nurses and the doctors who I did work with closely, that they were going to treat me like a person. They were going to see me. They're going to talk to me like a person. And it was still super hard. I still got an informed consent pile of words that I still don't entirely understand. And I don't know medicine, but I do understand words. It's the one thing I'm actually good at, that and making omelets, and which doesn't help you when you have cancer. But it was really challenging every step of the way. But I had people who put me first, and who put who I was and what I needed, and accommodated me when I needed to take a week off to do something else, to go to Cape Cod with my daughters, who accommodated me when I was a person who had person needs. And I'm still that person to them. And when I think about all of that, and I think about the emotion that went into that choice, I think we do in this room, but in the outside world, they, or the we that exist in the larger scale, we don't prioritize and privilege emotion to the extent that I think is required, or at least in the way that it is required. Because, I'm in this program right now in conflict negotiation, and it's really funny. We just got to the part where it's like, 3 different parts of your brain, all this brain science that's like very outdated, but they're lawyers, so we forgive them. And it's like in the back, there's your brain stem, and that's like the wild card, and that's where all your fear and impulsivity is. And then in the middle, it's just like your feelings. And then in the front, there's like the jewel of the crown, and that's your prefrontal cortex, and that's where your rational brain is. And it's so like in a family where you just feel like the middle part of your brain is being told, why can't you be like the prefrontal cortex? Like, why can't you just be rational? Like, why can't you just be reasonable? Why are you making a choice about your life or death based on your feelings instead of evidence, right? And here's the thing. That doctor is not a bad person. He's not even a bad doctor. I know people who've been his patients who love him. But he was coming at me with his rational mind. He was coming at me with the assumption that I knew the facts, that I knew the benefits of this trial, and that it wasn't even going to be a decision for me, that I was going to do the logical thing. But what I've also learned in conflict resolution is there is this thing called, where you devalue the opinions of people who you have regarded as the enemy. So when someone you don't like makes a really good point, you have reactive devaluation. And we all do it, right? Like sometimes you see somebody in the news and you're like, but I really don't like that guy. And then he does something right and you're like, still don't like him, and it must be a bad idea because it's coming from him, right? Like when your enemy, and we all have one at least, does something really cool, you're just like, well, that's gotta be stupid because it's coming from them. And when this doctor presented me with this promising clinical trial that wound up changing the game in cancer research more than any other breakthrough in over a century, I was like, no, because I don't like him. I don't like his style. And I think that so much of what we're doing in our culture right now that is so polarizing is we're trying to do this kind of binary of this is good or this is bad or this person's right or this person is wrong. And it's all supposed to be based on our prefrontal cortex, and we can see the logic of things, and if we're just logical about things, we'll make good decisions. And that's not how things are done, and it's not even correct, and it's not even helpful. And the world is right now being run by 5 guys who don't prioritize empathy and caring and feeling because they don't have it. So they think those things are soft skills, which is a term I absolutely hate, because what they're really saying is they're girly skills. I once gave a talk to a hospital group about why physicians need good communication skills and why you need to be able to talk to patients like people, which I didn't think was a radical idea. And a doctor came up to me afterwards and he said, I heard you had to say, but that's what nurses are for. Again, I'm remembering that. You're on my list too, mister. I will be talking about you. Because what he really was saying, I think, is like that's what women are for. Right, because 85% of nurses are women. And we'll leave that to the girls. And the men will do the serious work of healthcare. We don't have time for this extraneous stuff, like feelings. And the thing is, those 5 guys who run the world know that emotion actually does count, because the algorithm is designed to excite our emotions. The problem is that the way that our news and information is fed to us is designed to excite our fear and our anger. And we on the other side, who are advocating for something else, I think fall into the trap of thinking if we can just explain why that's not good, then we can change things. Whereas what we really should be doing is hijacking the narrative, like they are, and using emotion as well, but using it in a more constructive way. We live in a culture right now where our healthcare is getting worse and worse and worse. That's just objectively true. We have worse outcomes than ever right now. We are declining against our peer nations in terms of heart disease, maternal mortality, neonatal mortality. I don't think I even need to tell you about gun deaths. I don't think I need to remind you what the #1 killer of our children and adolescents is. It's guns. If we want to be persuasive, we can't ask the people who are running things and who are running our health care, who are shortening our visits, who are telling our doctors to spend less time talking to us, that they should just be nicer, because they don't care. They don't. What we need to do is to be able to figure out how to exploit the systems, because what happens is, I can't believe you're all going to now be treated to the second Donner Party reference of your morning. But I happen, Margaret, to be reading a book about the Donner Party right now. It's called The Indifferent. Right, I know. When you started talking about the Donner Party, I was like, that is Margaret's eerie. And here's the thing, the main takeaway I want you to get from the Donner Party is shortcuts don't always work well. You think you're going to get to California a little bit faster, and the next thing you know, you're eating somebody's dad. So when we talk about like shortening doctor visits and we talk about streamlining these processes, what we're really doing is trapping ourselves in the Sierra foothills until the spring. And what I like to do, when I talk to people like you, I can appeal to compassion and mercy and all the human things that we still actually feel. But when I talk to pharmaceutical companies or I talk to hospital groups, I talk to them about money. I'm not afraid to talk about money. here's the thing. We're losing upwards of $1 billion a year because in our healthcare systems because of miscommunication. 70% of clinical trials never get off the ground because they can't recruit. That is billions of dollars wasted. We have barely moved the needle in terms of retention. Patients who don't like their doctors or don't feel they can trust their doctors, by the way, also for the first time, I think just 2 years ago, the number of Americans who say they're dissatisfied with their health care rose above 50%. We don't like it, and that means we're not compliant. There's an interesting study I was reading recently about mental health, and patients who are on antidepressants who like and trust their doctors are 25% more likely to take their antidepressants. Do you want to sell antidepressants? Then you should be more likable. Like, it's very simple. And I know that some people have to be taught to do that, but it's also not hard. And it's also not inefficient. You probably know because you're medical people. I had to learn that when you look someone in the eyes, like I'm looking at you right now, Margaret, your brain releases oxytocin, and you and I start to feel good. So if your doctor is staring at a form while he's talking to you, you're not going to like him as much. You're not going to trust him as much. You might not come back. All of those little things that don't have to be hard. But another thing we talk about in conflict resolution is, of course, the sunk cost fallacy. And we're in these systems now that feel like, well, this is how we do things, and we can't change. And we're going to keep doing, and what we're going to do instead is just like shave off a little bit more and a little bit more, and it's like the shittification of everything is not just about like this dress that I'm wearing from H&M, right? Like it's also about the care that we get. And it's this death of 1,000 paper cuts that's just scraping away. And if we just tweak things a little bit, and that's the case I always try to make, is it's like I'm truly not trying to sell you on making everything nicer and better and warmer, because I know the people who run systems don't care. The doctors care, the nurses care, the researchers care, but the people who are deciding whether or not you're going to get covered for a particular healthcare plan, the people who are deciding who gets hired in a hospital don't care. They don't care that people are leaving healthcare in droves. They don't care that doctors are leaving in droves. They don't care that healthcare is right behind law enforcement in terms of workplace violence, which, by the way, is also new within the past 5 years, COVID. Things don't actually have to suck. They don't. And the things that have come along in the last few years, since back 14 years ago, when I got stage 4 cancer, and the world was very different, and Taylor was like 10 relationships ago. A lot of those things are really good, are really positive. Patients who are looking at clinical trials actually like doing online onboarding. They like using telemedicine. We can be using these things to make people feel safer and more comfortable. There are a lot of advantages that we have now in our arsenals. I'm not saying I have to go back to my one country doctor in a fictional Grover's Corners that I've never even lived in. I'm from Jersey City. We can use these tools in ways that articulate our humanity, that make us feel more empowered. Patients also really like talking to ChatGPT. They like using these tools. It makes them feel more empowered. Like years ago, I actually met with and talked to some people who were starting an AI business, and the first place they started was in adolescent mental health, because adolescents are more open to technology. And what they found is it's like that was a good way for teens to do role play, so that when they come in and talk to their therapists, they feel really comfortable about asking questions to a real life person. There's a lot of great things we can be doing. But the fact that, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm wearing out the interpreters. You just flew in and boy, are your hands tired. All of these things are really important and useful and helpful for us. when I think about the ways in which the last several years, obviously one of the biggest changes is the ways in which misinformation and disinformation has glutted all of us, and we are all fighting against that. I feel like I come from a background in journalism. It's like fighting against the tide of stupidity and really dangerous ideology is like, it just feels like I feel like a Sisyphus just pushing a rock up the mountain, right? Like I have a Substack and it's a health politics one, and literally every other one that's ahead of me is anti-vax stuff. Like really crazy. I actually, just to sort of confirm some things for me this morning, I looked at the one that's like above me on Substack, and one of the recent posts is, QAnon didn't go far enough. Yeah. Oh, right. And I'm like, and you have more subscribers than I do. Like, damn you, right? Like, is that what I have to do? But I think when I look at that, when I look at the Gwyneth Paltrow's and the RFK Juniors and the just dumb AI stuff that's out there, I'm like, this is our fault. Like, we did this. Not us, we're great. But as a system, as a country, we did this. And the reason it happened is because we don't trust our doctors. We feel dehumanized when we go to talk to our doctors. We feel like we're not a person when we sit in that office in that paper gown. My doctor and I, once a year, we do this. I love this. We do this class. I'm going to give you another one where I'm like, oh, I'm remembering this. You can see I never forget anything. I have a long list. I'm like Arya Stark. I'm just like, well, you're going on that list too. But we do this class once a year at med school at New York Presbyterian to medical students. And every year, my doctor sits down and he is introduced by the instructor, who's a very prominent physician, and he tells he's like, and this is Dr. Jed Walchuk, and he is the head of this department, and he's won these awards, and he's done this, and he's the chair of that, and he's done this, and he sits on the board of this, and this is one of his patients. And the last time he did it, I said, I really want to thank you for that, because this is what we're talking about right here. And I'm actually getting a PhD now, so that I can come back here and you can remember my name, because it's going to have doctor in front of it. I spent thousands of dollars because I'm beefing with this guy, but that's okay. Because also that's who I am. Like, okay, like, it's on, and I will do that, and I will get that. Why am I getting a PhD? For spite? Yeah. That's what it takes. That's fine. But it's like, if you're not seen as a person, if you're just a tumor, or at best you're just a patient, then of course you're going to look somewhere else. Then of course you're going to say, well, you know what, like, this Substack that's telling me that QAnon didn't go far enough is really speaking to me right now. Like, I get that. I really do. When I type something into ChatGPT and I say, like, who are 5 top experts in this field that I might be able to interview for this story, or what's some recent research on this topic, and then something comes back, and if there's something that feels off, and I type back, that's not right, or that's not what I'm looking for, can anybody tell me what ChatGPT is going to say to me? Say that again. It
says, I'm sorry.
When was the last time someone said, I'm sorry to you? When was the last time one of your doctors said it? Right? I get ChatGPT, I'm sorry, let's try that again. And then I get a surge of dopamine, right? Because someone has validated me, and it doesn't matter if it's a bot. That is intentional, and it's brilliant. It's really, really clever. So I get it, but I think if we can do that, if we can say, you know what, if a bot can say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, can we tell our doctors to do that? Can we tell the team at the front desk at intake? Can we say, here's a way of presenting our informed consent materials to you that's not going to overwhelm you and scare you? Can we just even protect, like, I get it, like, not everybody can do the work that you do because you wouldn't be in bioethics and humanities if you couldn't do this, but like, just pretend. Like, just, I'll teach you. Like, if we can teach a robot to do this, we can teach you to just like make some eye contact. Just be pleasant, because that's going to keep people where they need, where you can get some money out of them. And if that's what it takes, then that's what I'll say. Because the stakes are too high. And the body count is too high. And the people who are the most vulnerable are the ones who are getting the most hurt, especially now. You know, when I first started at my clinical trial, only 5% of people who are eligible for clinical trials would enroll in them. And only 5% of those people were people of color. And now, about 15% of people who enroll in clinical trials are people of color, although it's still 5% who are eligible. So that means we've progressed 1% a year. And I've spent the last 15 years talking to pharmaceutical companies, and they're all like, what can we do to get more people of color into clinical trials? And it's like, I don't know, suck less. Like, just start by sucking less. You know? Like, who's designing your trials? I mean, I've stood in front of rooms that are just pretty much all white faces and had them say, what can we do to get more people of color in our trials? And I'm like, why don't you get more people of color in your research? Start with that. I don't know, I'm not a medical, like, I didn't go to med school and I know this. It's not hard. It's actually just like some stupid common sense about being a person who's sensitive and empathetic. And yet somehow that seems to be the hardest thing in the world. I look at where we are now. I look at the fact that research is being cut, that funding is being cut, that any of the slight bit of ground we have moved forward on in terms of getting diversity into clinical trials, in terms of changing who has access, in terms of not just that, but like off-site trials, rural communities, communities that need the most help and are suffering the most, and all of the effort that has been made is now being pushed back, is being punished. I feel so demoralized. I feel so sad and so scared. But we're not here because we're quitters. We're here because we're problem solvers. We're here because we are the people who see something that is sticky and messy and awful, and we're like, that's my jam. That's where I want to be, right? That's what we do. It's the hardest work, and it's also the easiest, because it's just about being a human being. 3 years ago, I got an email from Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is always like, well, at least they're not calling. It's probably going to be okay, telling me that Jed Walchuk was leaving the hospital. And he was moving on to head a lab not too far, just really down the street at New York Presbyterian. And that was what he was going to do, was be moving on to this research. And I sent him an email, and I said, Jed, I'm so sorry that you're not going to be my doctor anymore, but I'm so excited for the work that you're going to be doing now, and for all of the people that you're going to be able to help now on a whole new level. And I don't know, 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It's like it's a summer afternoon. I'm at the orthodontist with my daughter, and I step outside, and it's Jed. And he says, oh, I got your email. And I said, yeah, congratulations. And he said, well, I wanted to ask you something. Would you still be my patient? I know. He's like the guy. I love him so much. I just love him. And I said, I thought you weren't seeing patients anymore. And he said, well, I'm going to see like a handful of them, because continuing to see patients is good for my humanity. Imagine that, right? Imagine like keeping that in the front of your mind. What in research is going to be good for my humanity, so that when I come back into the lab, and I remember, as Jed says, I don't treat cancer, I treat people, that you're still seeing people, and you still have to look them in the eye and be accountable to them. That's all it takes. I am still here, standing in front of you. Again, wouldn't have chosen this. Didn't want this. I thought I was just going to review movies and talk to movie stars. This is what I thought was going to happen in my life. But I'm still here. And a week from today, I'm going to be at my daughter's graduation. And she's still here. And 9 years ago, she almost died of an infection. And I was the one who called 911. And if Jed Walchuk hadn't asked me 14 years ago what was important to me, I wouldn't be here. She wouldn't be here. Her college roommate, who she had to call 911 on, when it turned out she had a tumor, but it was like, I'm 18 and I have stomach pain, I'm sure it's fine. And my daughter said, oh, this is not my first rodeo, we're going to the hospital. She wouldn't be here. And you know, Dr. Oz says we all need to get well and healthy so that we can get back to work. Well, if we all want to get back to work, we have to first not die. And the way that we don't die is by looking at each other. So I just want to say thank you for being here, for coming to Portland. I had to come on after a llama. I didn't know there was a llama. If I'd known there was a llama, I would have said no way, or at least put me on before the llama, so the expectations are right-sized. I am so privileged that I get to say thank you to every single person in this room. Because if nobody tells you enough, because the world is full of stupid ingrates, I will tell you, what you do is important. If you never see patients, if you don't talk to them, if you don't know, I will tell you on behalf of them that what you do means something. And what it means isn't just our lab results. It's those graduations. It's holding my mom's hand and hearing her say, I love you one last time. All the stupid, often awful, hard things that I've had to be here for that would have been so terrible if I'd missed. Thank you for that. I want you to come up, don't wuss out on me, and be brave. Here you come. Come on, come on, come on, come on. A little closer, a little closer, a little closer. And talk to me.
Thank you. Please bear with me. I really appreciate your value about accommodating persons as persons. I'm a third-year PhD student, and
I'm sorry. Oh God, I'm sorry.
The spite is the fuel.
Go.
I wouldn't be here if there weren't individuals in this room that accommodated me for the invisible disabilities that I have and believed in me to keep going. So future Dr. Mary Elizabeth Williams, I look forward to meeting you in that space.
Future doctor.
Individuals like Peggy, who is the only professor who had the audacity to ask me what it takes to show up and be me and be a student. And that means the therapy that I have to do and the medication I have to take and the experience I have to be me, to show up. And I think these individuals who have let me come and be and exist and not die and bear with me when I was sick, because there are individuals in this room, unfortunately, who have not. And so I'm taking that New Jersey spice and I'm willing to just say that. There are individuals that did not see me as a human being and almost obstructed my ability to participate in my PhD program. And I just wanted to second the importance of not seeing individuals as molecules, as their disease, as their condition, and most importantly, look them in the eye and say their name. So thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
Hi, My name's Catherine.
Hi, Catherine. Good
I
morning.
have multiple
Wait, it's still morning.
I have multiple myeloma.
How you
not
doing?
Melanoma.
How are you doing?
I'm in remission.
Okay,
So,
Yay!
I too am getting my PhD in bioethics and medical humanities.
Look at us. Look at us.
And I have an MFA in theater. So, and I am working on my performance autoethnography about my diagnosis and other stuff and things like that. And so I think the question that I wanted to ask you is about the emotional labor of telling our stories and the value of telling our cancer stories, and how you, especially because I'm only a year and a half into this, right? But you're 14 years into it. And so like, the weight of telling your story like that, and yeah, that's it.
I like that. I'm glad you're doing well. Where are you going to school?
Case.
Nice. For me, personally, the weight of telling my story is so much lighter than the weight of carrying it.
Amen.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the simple answer, is when I was first diagnosed, the day I was diagnosed, I thought, I'm not going to share this. I don't want people to just see me as someone with cancer. I don't want my identity to change. And then I went to Sloan Kettering, and that night I wrote my first story, and 48 hours after I had been diagnosed, I'd already published my first story about it. So I'm clearly, it's clearly a sickness with me. I'm compulsive, but you know, I have a friend who's a filmmaker, and she makes documentaries, and she was going through this story in her family where a relative had been the victim of elder abuse, and she's like, I want to do this movie about elder abuse. And I said, what do people who can't tell their stories do? Oh my God, what do they do with it? You know, that's why I love narrative medicine, narrative mediation, conflict mediation. It's like anything where like we can, in whatever way possible, tell our stories. My friend Larry Smith is the person who started this thing called the 6-Word Memoir Project, and if you know about it, it's really amazing, and it's really simple. It starts with the apocryphal Ernest Hemingway story that, you know, tell a short story, and it's for sale, baby shoes, never worn. And the challenge that came out of that was, can you tell your story in 6 words? Everyone can tell their story. Everyone has a story, and everyone can tell it. And we may not write books, or we may not make movies, or we may not be a theater person, we may not be getting an MFA, good, you know, or you got an MFA. But I think people who don't tell their stories or don't have an outlet for it are the miserable SOBs in the comment sections, right? Like I do. I think they're the unhappy people on the internet who feel like everyone must be miserable. Because when you share your story and you go, wow, me too, literally me too, you just realize you're not alone. And that's what we all just want. It's about being seen. Yeah, so I'm excited for you.
Thanks, I'm excited for you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a very personal thank you. I'm also a Mary Elizabeth, although I go by Mary Beth.
I do too, but don't tell anyone.
But I can call you that, right?
Yes.
I'm a psychotherapist, and I really appreciate what you brought forward around emotion and the value of human connection. And I can also relate to, without a terminal degree, wondering if I have a place at this table. Most importantly, I want to mention my sister, Dr. Melinda Catherine Gordon. She was an oncologist who also did a medical ethics fellowship at the University of Chicago. She died of inflammatory breast cancer in 2007, just 2 years after her diagnosis. She studied doctor-patient communication.
Wow.
She would have loved your work, and I appreciate you for what you're doing to move this forward.
Thank you. I would have loved her work too. I'm sorry. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. One of the things that strikes me about the context in which you tell it is we often hear accounts like this about your oncologist, your interaction in the clinical realm. What's unique about yours is that at least the ones that you share, your most problematic interactions were in the clinical research realm, right? And when, speaking as a research ethicist, we often focus on that giant consent form stack that you get, and we do everything we can to limit that stack, to make it as understandable as possible, and at the same time give you the information you might need, right? None of that helps anybody look you in the eye.
No.
And I can't think of a research ethics consult that I've done in my career or an interaction with researchers where I've talked about this. I talk about this with medical students, with residents, with fellows, but not with clinical research staff. So you've been telling your story for 14 years. You have been embedded in the research context for 14 years. Do you have ideas for what the mechanisms are for how we can train this whole different group of people about the importance of what we sometimes call the clinical gaze, right, in the interaction?
I do have ideas.
Ooh, share, please.
Okay, I've got a couple of them. And again, it's like I always try to be like, this doesn't have to, I'm not trying to like reinvent the wheel or cost a lot of money, but we all know that people have different learning styles. And I, as a person who actually responds well to words, hated my consent forms, and they haven't gotten clearer and they haven't gotten easier. And I always like to tell the story of, and I don't, this is not someone I don't forgive, because she meant well. But I talked to an IRB once, and this woman got up and she said, I really appreciate what you said about making consent forms easier. You know, when I write a consent form, what I do is then I run it through Microsoft Word and I make sure that it's written at a 6th grade level. And I said, have you ever shown one of these to a 6th grader? Because I think it's not really about the words. It's kind of about the way they're strung together. That's kind of what writing is. I didn't say that part because I'm not that snippy, but so I think plain language, like we still have so far to go, but also like we're all kinds of different learners, right? And I think just sort of like sending these forms off in a, an attachment doesn't work. Like, what are we doing to create audio materials? What are we doing to create visual materials? Again, that doesn't seem like that heavy a lift. When you're meeting and you're in your consult with the research team, has someone said, would you like to walk around as we talk about this? If you're a kinetic learner, which I also am, that's how I rehearse, that's how I memorize, that might be better for you. Like, again, it doesn't have to be this like super bespoke, personalized, like just having options for people and not thinking that like a form that is written in the most obtuse language that someone who does not have my reading skills, who doesn't speak this language, whose language is maybe not as up to where mine is, or who just is like a different cultural context, like it's just not going to work. So what can we do within the parameters that we have, understanding that we can't make everything tailored to one single person, but to think, why aren't we doing things that are visual? Why aren't we doing things that are auditory? Why aren't we doing things that are Connecticut? Sorry, that's a state and a muffin company. Like all of those things I think can be done, and I don't think they have to be hard. So that's what I would do. I think we have time for like one or. Okay, we have 5 minutes. I just got a flash. Okay, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for this. This was beautiful. I'm a medical student, and I'm in the bioethics world. I've had really good mentors in terms of how to talk to patients, and I feel like that's something I'm fairly comfortable with. But I've found that sometimes in clinical situations where I am a student, there are other people who interact in a way that to me doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like how I would want somebody to treat me. And again, I am the student in this situation. There's a hierarchy, and managing that is always a little bit of a challenge. But do you have any ideas or suggestions for how at this kind of level I can help facilitate that for patients?
That's a tough one. Oh boy, because here's the thing. There are consequences for being seen as difficult or disruptive. There are consequences, especially for women. I remember I was saying something to a male friend of mine recently, and I said something, well, it's like I did this, but it's not very good. And he said, don't do that. Don't put yourself down like that. And I said, okay, but if you've been told you're difficult or you're full of yourself or you think you're all that for 30 years in the professional space, you might actually need to do that. You might have internalized the need to talk down about yourself. Like I completely get that it's not as easy as saying, hey, what if we did things differently? Like it's really challenging, especially if you're in an environment where you feel like you are different and you are challenging someone's authority. I mean, my guest advice is to be as sneaky as possible. Like truly, like be as sneaky as you can. Like just like I would be thinking strategically about who is this individual who is saying this? How can I undermine them in a way that doesn't feel like undermining? Like what would that be? Would it be like, you know, I was looking at that and I was thinking like how well you did, like do the whole like sandwich thing where it's like you did that so well, that was amazing, but like I was also thinking it might be interesting if we added this thing on as well, you know? Like just the best advice I can be is to just be like sneaky and undermining. Think for an ethics panel, that's what I've come up with. Because you have to play the game. You just do. We can't just call people out on their nonsense because they might retreat. Like you get back to the, you know, the whole like that is how we deprioritize what people say because we feel defensive. So I would be really cautious. I know that's a real thing. And I try to live in the real world. And we can talk all day about like what we should say to each other and how we should treat each other. And the fact is, it doesn't always happen. So good luck and be sneaky.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'm going to go to you and then you. How's that sound? Okay. Oh, I'm going to you and then you and then you. Hi.
Hi. So I agree with you about the fundamental necessity of being seen and seeing others. But I think that a potential alternative narrative about the current administration is that in part they're successful because they've enabled a certain part of the electorate to feel seen.
Oh, yeah.
So that within your conceptual model, do you, and the emphasis on emotion, do you think people are able to know when they're authentically being seen or when they're performatively being seen? And if it's not that they're able to intuit that difference, then what's the next step, particularly related to misinformation beyond seeing others? Because there's a lot of people who offer different ways of being seen.
Yeah, that's a super complicated question. Thanks for that. I wish I could just say like, yes, I agree. I think it is very complicated. And again, I think there is merit in like fake it till you make it, you know? Like I think there is merit in I hate feeling like the emotional labor that people on what feels to me like the more ethical side of the table have to do and by the way, like I'm a white person, I'm a cisgender person, I have loads of privilege. I get that like I am not as marginalized as so many people. But I think those of us who have any kind of power and privilege, the more that we can do to not shut down people, to be as respectful as we are capable of being while also being challenging, is important because just saying like you're wrong just doesn't work. It just doesn't. What works is being able to find common ground. What works is being able to say like, you know, you care about keeping your kids safe. And so do I. We all just want what's best for your kids. So maybe we're like, what can we do to not have a measles outbreak? You know, like stupid stuff like that. I think that the more, and it's hard when people are screaming at you, and it's hard, and some people are never gonna change. And some people don't wanna change, and they'd just rather be horrible, hateful, white supremacists. And we just gotta let them go, because they're not coming to the table, right? But what we can do is maybe try and pick off some of the stragglers by showing them that we're listening to them. Because it is about feeling seen and heard. And it's not gonna work with everybody. But yelling at people definitely doesn't work, as much as I wanna scream at everybody all the time, particularly when I'm on the MTA. Okay, you, and then we're gonna keep talking. Okay? Then we're gonna just keep talking, but we're gonna do it in a more, I'll come down and I won't have a microphone, okay? So you and you, okay. But first you.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Francesca. I'm an undergraduate student at Loyola Marymount University.
Hi.
I just kind of want to share my experience and ask you a question about how to go forward with it. But when I was 14, I was diagnosed with PANS, and I had a really violent tic disorder before I was going to go into high school. And so I had a really tough time trying to balance the transition while also having this like really violent outward appearance that people couldn't understand. And at the same time, I was seeing one of the best pediatric neurologists in Texas, but he did not believe in psychiatry. And my parents just kind of went with that because it was a really good system in a way, but I wasn't supported across all aspects of my experience. And I just want to ask now, being in college, now that I'm seeing doctors and going to appointments by myself, what advice do you have for young patients that are learning how to use that autonomy, and how can I be proactive in sharing my feelings with the doctor? Or, because I don't want to just say, I don't feel comfortable. I want them to actually understand the implications. So what advice do you have for young people, or just people who struggle with having this new autonomy that you didn't have as a minor?
It's hard, and you can't just say to people, well, be more assertive, right? Like, that doesn't work. My daughter went to, she's 21, she's probably close, my younger one is close in age with you, and she had a doctor's appointment over the summer, and she's having some complaints, and she said, they did this test that was like this, and I said, what was that for? What were they looking for? And she said, I don't know, I didn't ask. And I was like, did I raise you to not ask questions? Like, 21 years of me being like, how much more confrontational do I need to train you to be, honey? It's hard. It's really, really hard. And it's really, really scary. And all I can say is that a competent person will not be threatened by a reasonable question. And if you are meeting someone with respect and curiosity, a competent provider will give you a clear answer. And you should feel like it's okay to say, I didn't understand that. And to keep saying, I didn't understand that, until you get an answer. And I know sometimes it doesn't happen. I had, when my mother-in-law was dying, her doctor told my husband, I don't have time to answer that, just Google it. Yeah, he's on my list too. And my husband would never push back, like never, ever. I'm the bad cop, obviously. And I was like, who is he? Get him on the phone. It's hard. It is really, really hard, and you may not ever get satisfied. But I just want to tell you that. I want to look at you and say, you have a right to ask a respectful, curious question. And a person who knows their stuff will not be intimidated by you. And I know that it's not easy to well, they didn't, so now I have to get another doctor. Sometimes you don't have options, and sometimes a not great person is your best option. But it also, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I hope you keep practicing. I hope that helps. Thank you. All right, thank you, Francesca. All right, you get to be the finale.
Oh, goodness, thank you.
My masked friend.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Jess Walters. I'm an arts research fellow at the University of Virginia.
Hi.
And I'm not an academic, sort of out of spite, but for the same reasons.
This room is running on spite.
Well, that kind of brings me to my question. I am a patient. I'm a board-certified patient advocate, but I am also a lab rat, and I also surround myself in academic spaces. And I just want to point out that without a doctor, you're here as a plenary speaker at this conference. And I think that it's very telling that you were asked to be here in that position. And yet, existing as a non-academic in academic spaces feels like we need to earn a degree in order for our lived experience to be credible.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do in this room with these people to make space for us to continue to exist without feeling like we need a piece of paper to show our work?
I know. Jess, I am right there with you. It's, I think, ridiculous and unfair, and it's not just in medicine. One of the big reasons I went to get this PhD is because I have a friend who's in the military, And he said, I would be in rooms with 4-star generals and admirals, and I was Colonel Mike, and nobody cared. So I had to become Dr. Mike to get people to listen to me. And I wish that that wasn't the case, and I wish that that kind of intellectual snobbery did not exist. And I wish that every time I go to a conference and they say, what are your academic credentials and what are your degrees? I could say, like, I have a BA in film from Temple University. Like, you know, that I wish that wasn't the case. The fact is, the reality in which we live, I have been on so many panels and in so many boards, and they love to trot out the patient. And they love to say, look what the patient is doing. Look how well this person is thriving. Look how well they're healing. Look at them. Good for us. Let's all pat ourselves on the back. And then they don't listen. I don't know what to do about that. I don't. It's really, really hard. And I think part of what we need to do is make sure that we are also really thriving in our other communities and our other spaces, and we are forming coalitions because we're stronger together. And that if there are 5 of us making noise, we can make more noise than one of us. But I am a working class person who's one of the first in my family to go to college, and I am very, very, very aware of the intellectual and academic snobbery that still exists in so many spaces. And I want to just burn it all down and start a revolution, but what I'm doing instead is paying tuition. So all I can say is I feel you. I really, really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take this lav off, and then we're going to keep talking, all right? Thank you.